He was just a salvager. Until the alien queen broke down in tears, Kale had never expected life among the stars to be exciting. Most people in the Outer Rim believed in adventure and glory, but Kale had learned long ago that survival was more important than heroics. He was a salvager drifting from wreck to wreck, gathering parts, tools, and old tech that could still hold value. His ship, the Rogue Sparrow, was small, worn, and patched with duct tape and stubborn human ingenuity. It squeaked in places it shouldn't, leaked in places it shouldn't, and yet it kept flying. To Kale, that was enough. Life was quiet, predictable, and lonely, but it was his. The debris fields of the Outer Rim were dangerous, not because of pirates or storms, but because of the sheer unpredictability of the wreckage. Starships came apart in ways no one could anticipate. Kale had learned to read the patterns of broken metal and drifting engines, to feel the currents of space as if they were rivers, and to judge whether a vessel was worth boarding. It was a skill honed over years, learned through trial, error, and a fair share of luck. That day, Kale's sensors picked up something unusual. Amidst the drifting shells of old freighters and long-dead cargo ships, his instruments traced a signal unlike anything he had encountered before. It was faint but coherent, a rhythm that suggested life, or at least the remnants of it. Curiosity pricked at him. Salvaging was one thing, but discovering the unknown, that was rare. He adjusted his course and drifted closer to the source. The ship he found was unlike any Kale had ever seen. It was enormous, far larger than a freighter, but its surface was scarred, torn open in places, as if the stars themselves had scratched it apart. The hull glowed faintly, a pale blue that pulsed in a pattern almost like breathing. Kale's heart beat a little faster. The ship wasn't on any charts. No one in the Outer Rim had ever mentioned it, yet it was here, drifting alone, as if waiting for someone to notice. Kale suited up, checked his tools, and prepared to board. There was no fear in him, only the practiced caution of someone who had navigated danger countless times. Airlock seals hissed as he connected his suit to the ship's port, and he stepped inside. The interior was dark, almost entirely empty, except for the dim glow of the corridors, which seemed impossibly wide. The air was still, almost sterile, carrying a faint hum that resonated through Kale's bones. He wandered through the ship, scanning, noting the technology. It was far beyond anything he had seen. Panels adjusted to his presence, lights shifting subtly as if acknowledging him. Kale ran his hands along a control console, marveling at the smoothness. The way circuits seemed almost alive, responding to touch. The ship wasn't just advanced, it was intelligent. Then he saw it. In the center of a vast chamber lay a stasis pod, enormous, almost throne-like. Its surface was translucent, allowing him to see the figure inside. Kale froze. The being inside was unlike anything human, or any alien he had seen in history records. Its skin shimmered faintly, pale and translucent. Its head was crowned with a subtle ridged crest, and its eyes, though closed, were large and full of depth. It was majestic, regal, and terrifyingly beautiful. Kale's stomach tightened with awe. He didn't know what drew him closer, curiosity, compassion, or the strange feeling that this being's life depended on him. Scanners revealed critical failures. The pod was damaged, life support was flickering. Kale knelt and examined the interface, instinctively adjusting settings, bypassing circuits that had long stopped working. The ship reacted to his touch, lights brightening, panels sliding open to allow access to hidden conduits. It was as if the vessel itself had been waiting for him, the human, to arrive. Hours passed unnoticed as Kale worked. He soldered, rerouted power, and improvised repairs using tools he carried for nothing more complicated than broken freighters. The pod system stabilized, though he had only a fraction of what was needed to fully revive the occupant. When he finally stepped back, sweat lining his brow, the chamber shivered and the pod hissed. A faint glow illuminated the being inside, and its eyes opened. Kale almost dropped his toolkit. The creature looked at him, and Kale felt the weight of intelligence, centuries of thought, and a depth of emotion in those eyes that no human, or any life form he knew, had ever held. He stumbled over his words. "You're alive." The being's voice came, not through sound, but directly in his mind. It was calm, regal, and heavy with centuries of command. "I am," it said. Then almost immediately it faltered, and Kale realized the queen, for that was what he now knew her to be, was in pain. Not physical pain, but exhaustion so deep that it felt like sorrow had taken form. Tears glimmered at the corners of her eyes, strange and alien, but unmistakably tears. Kale froze. He had faced dangerous beasts, rogue ships, and malfunctioning AIs, but he had never seen anything like this. The Queen looked at him with something that resembled fear but not hostility. She looked vulnerable, and she was crying. "I do not understand," she said. Her voice was heavy, almost breaking. "Why would you help me?" Kale's hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the moment. "Because I can, because it's wrong to leave someone like this," he said simply. "And because maybe someone needs help even if I don't know them." Her eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, Kale thought she would close them again. But instead, she continued to stare, and the tears streamed more freely. "No one has ever shown me this," she whispered, voice catching. "No one, not in centuries," Kale swallowed. "Humans aren't perfect," he admitted. "We make mistakes, we fight, but we try, we help when we can." The Queen's glow seemed to intensify, the pod responding to her emotions. She shifted slightly, still confined but aware. "You are different," she said. Her words, though alien in sound and thought, carried a weight Kale could understand. Recognition, respect, perhaps even awe. Kale spent the rest of the day with her, adjusting systems, explaining his rudimentary repairs in simple terms. She asked questions, not about technology, but about humans, about how he lived, why he scavenged, what he believed. His answers were honest, direct, and simple, and each answer seemed to comfort her more than any repair could. When night, or what passed for night in the outer debris, fell, Kale stepped back to examine the chamber. He realized the Queen had not spoken for hours, yet the tears continued to fall, slow and shimmering. He didn't know what to say. Most of his life had been mechanical, problem-solving, and survival. But this was something else. By the next day, Kale had repaired enough of the pod for the Queen to stand, though she needed support. Slowly, carefully, he helped her rise, and she regarded him with what could only be called gratitude. There was no language for it in human terms, respect and awe mixed with relief and fragile trust. "I owe you," she said finally, her voice firming. "But I do not know how to repay one who saves a queen," Kale shrugged. "You don't owe me anything, I'm just a salvager." "No," she said, and for the first time, Kale noticed a hint of a smile, delicate but real. "You are more. You are a human, and you are extraordinary." It was a moment that changed everything. Kale, who had spent his life unnoticed, patching broken ships and drifting alone, felt a stirring of something he had never known: importance. His hands, calloused and rough, had repaired not just a pod, not just circuits, but a life that could shape galaxies. The Queen gestured toward the main viewing port, and Kale followed her gaze. Through the reinforced glass, the debris field stretched endlessly. Among the floating wrecks, distant signals flickered, other ships, other beings, perhaps waiting, lost, or stranded. The Queen's glow dimmed slightly as she spoke, voice now steady. "We must leave this place. My people scattered across the stars. They wait for guidance. I need you, Kale, to help me restore what has been lost." Kale's breath caught. He had been content scavenging, surviving, drifting through emptiness. Now he faced a choice greater than anything in his quiet life. He could turn away, return to his ship, and continue as he always had. Or he could step into a story far larger than himself, one that might challenge everything he thought he knew about humans and the universe. He looked at the Queen, standing tall despite weakness, her tears long dried but her eyes shining with hope. Slowly, Kale nodded. "Then, let's see what we can do." The Queen smiled, a true smile, radiant and almost human in its expression. For the first time in centuries, she did not feel alone. And Kale, the unassuming salvager, had just begun a journey that would change not only his life, but the fate of a civilization. Kale had never thought that leaving the debris field could feel like stepping into an entirely new life. The rogue sparrow carried them both, the Queen and the salvager, through the blackness of space. The ship creaked, groaned, and hummed with the life he had breathed into it, but for the first time, Kale felt like he belonged to something larger than himself. The Queen, whose name he still did not know, sat quietly in the command chamber, watching him work as he adjusted the ship's systems for speed and efficiency. "You are human," she said, her voice calm, almost reverent, breaking the silence. "You think differently. I have studied countless species, and yet I do not understand how your kind survives with so little and still thrives." Kale smiled, adjusting a floating power conduit. "We make do, we find ways, that's all." "It is more than that," she replied softly. "It is ingenuity, courage, and hope, All of these are rare among my people. You carry them naturally. Kale shrugged. I just try to keep going. But even as he spoke, he realized that she was right. He had survived because he never gave up, because he looked for solutions when others might have panicked. That same persistence would be needed in the days to come. The queen finally spoke her name. I am Illyria. Kale, you have saved me, and in doing so, you have changed the fate of the Zythurian people. There are thousands of my kin scattered across the stars, isolated and afraid. They do not understand that someone survived to guide them. You will help me reach them. Kale swallowed hard. He was a simple salvager. He had repaired broken ships, patched failing engines, and scavenged old cargo for decades, but guiding an alien empire. That was beyond anything he could imagine. Still, as he looked at Illyria, her strength tempered with vulnerability, he felt something he had never felt before, responsibility. I don't know if I can, he admitted. I've never led anyone before. You already lead, she said softly, a note of awe in her voice. You lead with your mind. You see solutions where others see only obstacles. That is leadership. Kale focused on the ship, navigating through the debris field with careful precision. Every move had to be calculated. The field was dense, a tangle of metal and forgotten satellites. He used the ship's sensors to chart a safe path, improvising when scanners failed or obstacles appeared too quickly. As they drifted, Illyria studied him, occasionally offering guidance in ways he didn't fully understand but somehow trusted. Days passed, and Kale began to understand the challenge. The scattered Zythurian colonies were isolated by distance and fear. Many had turned inward, believing their queen lost, leaving their system stagnant. Illyria's communications arrays, damaged centuries ago, needed rebuilding. Kale improvised with the tools at hand, combining human ingenuity with alien technology. Slowly, he restored the first signal relay. A distant planet flickered to life on the ship's display. Illyria's eyes glowed faintly. They will hear me. They will know I am alive. Kale worked through the night, adjusting circuits and linking nodes, and finally the relay activated. A soft hum filled the chamber as the first message was sent. A simple greeting in the Zythurian tongue, accompanied by an image of Illyria standing alive, free from her pod. Minutes passed, but then the response came. Thousands of signals, faint and shaky at first, growing stronger, clearer. Zythurian ships, long dormant, began sending transmissions of hope, questions, and cautious joy. Illyria's people had never imagined their queen would return. Yet here she was, and beside her was Kale, a human. You did this, Illyria said softly, her glow brighter than ever. Without you, my people would have remained lost. Kale shook his head. I just fixed what was broken. You were the one who mattered. I just helped a little. Illyria's laughter, soft and musical, filled the chamber. Human humility is remarkable. Even in small things, you are extraordinary. Their work was far from over. The Zythurian people needed more than signals. They needed guidance, encouragement, and practical plans to rebuild their networks, restore communication, and begin a new era of cooperation. Kale applied human problem-solving at every step. He created mapping systems using improvised algorithms, adapted alien technology for quicker repairs, and even taught the Queen new ways to delegate tasks across her scattered fleet. For Kale, it was exhausting work. Every day brought new challenges. A failing power core, a planet with systems offline for centuries, communication loops that refused to stabilize. And yet, each obstacle strengthened his confidence. Humans were adaptable, and Kale embodied that perfectly. Where the Zythurians had relied on protocols and hierarchy, he relied on creativity and observation. Slowly, the scattered colonies began to recognize the Queen's voice, and Kale's influence became apparent. One morning, as they approached a particularly isolated Zythurian colony, Illyria turned to him. Kale, my people fear change. They have been alone too long. I need you to speak to them. Your presence, your human mind will make them listen. Kale hesitated. He had never been a speaker, never a leader in front of crowds. Yet Illyria's faith in him was unwavering. Taking a deep breath, he prepared. The colony's communication node flickered to life, and he spoke plainly, honestly, and with conviction. He explained how he had helped Illyria, how her people could reconnect, and how cooperation and ingenuity would restore their lost networks. To his surprise, the response was immediate. Signals flooded back, first tentative, then strong. The colony began mobilizing, sending messages of intent, updating systems, and preparing to reconnect. Illyria watched, her glow steady and proud. You inspire them, not through fear but through belief and honesty. That is rare. Kale smiled, finally understanding the true HFY truth. Humanity's strength was not in weapons, not in dominance, but in resourcefulness, creativity, and courage. Even in a universe of advanced civilizations, humans could shine. Days turned into weeks. Kale and Illyria moved from system to system, restoring networks, rebuilding communication arrays, and reconnecting fleets that had long been forgotten. Kale continued to improvise, combining scraps of alien technology with human methods. The scattered colonies began sending food, resources, and messages of thanks. Illyria's people, once fractured and hopeless, now looked forward to a future guided by her vision and human ingenuity. Throughout it all, Illyria never left Kale's side. She learned from him, laughed with him, and sometimes marveled at the simple, elegant solutions he devised for seemingly impossible problems. Kale began to see her not just as a queen, but as a partner, a friend, and a reminder that hope and resilience could take forms no one expected. One evening, as the twin suns of a distant planet set, Kale and Illyria stood side by side on the observation deck of the Rogue Sparrow. The colony below was alive with lights, ships moving, people reconnecting. Illyria turned to him, eyes glowing softly. Kale, you have changed not just my people, but me. You have reminded me that survival alone is not enough. Compassion, creativity, and courage, these are the things that endure. Kale shook his head. I didn't do much, I just helped where I could. You did more than you know, she said. Humans, you carry a strength that is rare even among the stars. You remind us that hope is never lost, and because of you, my people have a future. Kale looked at the thriving colony, the active networks, the lights of ships signaling across space. For the first time in his life, he felt truly proud. He had been a simple salvager, drifting alone, surviving in quiet isolation. Now he had helped restore a civilization, guided a queen, and shown that humans, clever, adaptable, and compassionate, could change the course of history. As they prepared to leave the planet, Kale reflected on the journey. He had expected debris fields, broken ships, and the solitude of space. Instead, he had found purpose, friendship, and the power of human ingenuity. The universe was vast and full of wonder, and humans, though small, imperfect, and fragile, could shine brighter than anyone expected. Illyria turned to him, her expression serene and radiant. Kale, we have much work ahead, but I know now we can succeed. With you by my side, humanity and Zythurians together, anything is possible. Kale nodded, gripping the ship's controls. For the first time, he felt the weight of possibility, the thrill of adventure, and the joy of making a difference. The stars stretched endlessly before them, but for Kale, the journey was no longer about survival. It was about hope, ingenuity, and the undeniable strength of the human spirit. And so, the Salvager who had once drifted alone among the forgotten wrecks of the Outer Rim, now guided a queen and inspired a civilization. The queen of the Zythurians wept no more, her people awakened, and humanity's quiet brilliance shone among the stars, lighting the way for a future no one had dared to imagine. The journey had only begun. The stars stretched endlessly before Kale as the Rogue Sparrow glided between distant systems. Though his ship was small, it carried him and Illyria further into the unknown than he had ever imagined. The Queen's people were reconnecting. Colonies once isolated were sharing knowledge, resources, and ideas, and a new hope was spreading like sunlight through the void. Yet for Kale, the journey had changed too. He no longer viewed the stars as empty, they were alive with possibility. Kale often found himself in quiet moments, watching Illyria study star charts and communicate with her people. The glow of her presence filled the ship, calm yet powerful. She was learning quickly, not just about technology, but about the human way of thinking, and Kale felt a strange mix of pride and humility. You have taught me something, Illyria said one evening, her voice soft as they floated above a vibrant planet. Your mind, your persistence, it is extraordinary. I wish I had understood it centuries ago. Kale shrugged, adjusting a navigation panel. I just do what I can. You have the real power. I just help it work better. Illyria shook her head, smiling faintly. Do not underestimate yourself, Kale. Humans, you see the world differently. You notice things my people overlook. You adapt in ways I could not imagine. That is rare, invaluable. Their journey took them to a planet that had once been a thriving center of Zythurian learning. Its towers of crystalline knowledge now lay in ruins, cracked and silent. Illyria's people had abandoned it centuries ago, believing it lost forever. Kale stepped onto the surface with her, the ground shimmering faintly beneath his boots. His eyes took in the remnants of libraries, energy grids, and floating archives, many still powered but frozen in time. This place was incredible, Kale murmured. All this knowledge left to rot? Illyria's glow dimmed slightly. Yes. Without guidance, my people forgot how to preserve, how to build, how to share. We lost more than our colonies. We lost ourselves. Kale knelt beside one of the inactive archives. He ran his fingers along the interface, a human trying to read alien language. Slowly, patterns emerged. His mind worked differently, creative, flexible, and persistent. He bypassed the failing encryptions, rewired circuits, and restored partial access. Lines of light flickered across the crystalline surfaces. The system hummed faintly as knowledge began to awaken again. Illyria's eyes widened in astonishment. You have restored it," she whispered. "I thought it lost forever. My people will learn again." Kale smiled, brushing dust from the console. "It's just systems. You just need someone to get them started." The following days were a rhythm of rebuilding. Kale worked alongside Illyria, restoring archives, networks, and communication hubs. Each day, scattered Zythurians contacted them, curious, eager, and sometimes skeptical. Kale's human approach, direct, practical, and full of simple explanations, won over even the most cautious of Illyria's people. They began to see that humans, though not as advanced as their technology, had a unique skill. They could improvise, adapt, and inspire. One morning, as Kale repaired a floating archive, a message came from a distant colony. Its systems were functioning, but the people were afraid. They had grown isolated for so long that the idea of reconnecting was frightening. Kale and Illyria quickly devised a plan. Kale spoke first, his tone calm and simple. "We understand your fear. Change is hard, but you are not alone. Help is here, and we can work together." Illyria transmitted alongside him, her voice warm and steady. "I am your queen. I have returned. Together we can restore what was lost. Together we can build a future." The colony responded slowly at first, signals tentative and cautious. But Kale's voice, plain and human, seemed to ease their hesitation. He explained step by step how to reconnect to the larger network, showing them that rebuilding was possible, practical, and safe. By the end of the day, the colony had restored basic communications, sending messages of gratitude and renewed hope. Kale was exhausted but satisfied. "It's working," he said, leaning back against a console. "They're learning, they're ready." Illyria's glow brightened. "Because of you, Kale, humans, you have a way of making the impossible seem natural. You inspire my people without even trying." Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Kale and Illyria traveled to every corner of the scattered Zythurian empire. Each time, Kale applied human ingenuity, finding solutions where alien methods failed, using simple tools in creative ways. He built mobile communication hubs, repaired floating archives, and even improvised teaching methods for colonies that had forgotten how to operate complex technology. The more Kale worked, the more he realized how much humans could accomplish when underestimated. Illyria's people had once believed humans weak and limited, but here he was, a simple salvager, showing them the power of perseverance, creativity, and compassion. The queen began speaking of him openly to her people, telling stories of his cleverness, his patience, and his unwavering dedication. Slowly, Kale became a symbol, not just of human capability, but of hope. One evening, after restoring a particularly isolated colony, Illyria approached Kale as he checked the power flow of a communication tower. "Kale, my people are beginning to speak of you in ways I never imagined," she said softly. "They call you the Human of Hope." Kale blinked. "Human of Hope, I don't know if I like that title." "You should," Illyria said, her glow steady and proud. "It is not given lightly. It is a recognition of courage, ingenuity, and heart. You embody what humans can be at their best." Kale felt a warmth he had never known. He had been a lone scavenger, drifting in silence, unnoticed by the universe. Now he had changed the fate of a civilization, inspired a queen, and shown the galaxy that humans, small, imperfect, and fragile, could shine brighter than any weapon or protocol. Their journey continued, and Kale grew more confident with each challenge. One day, while restoring a planetary archive, he realized something profound. Humans were not naturally stronger, faster, or more advanced than the Zythurians, yet their greatest strength lay in adaptability. Where others saw obstacles, humans saw opportunities. Where others froze, humans acted. It was not bravery born from fearlessness, but from persistence, problem-solving, and compassion. Illyria noticed the change in him. Kale, you are not just helping my people, you are teaching them. They are learning to think differently, to adapt, to find solutions when all seems lost. You are shaping the future. Kale shrugged. I'm just showing what humans can do, that's all. It is more than that, she said, smiling softly. It is extraordinary and it is needed. The galaxy needs humans like you. By now, the Zythurian Empire was awakening. Colonies once isolated and frightened were reconnecting. Networks hummed with data and ideas. Illyria's people began to rebuild not just infrastructure, but culture, knowledge, and confidence. They learned from Kale's methods, observation, improvisation, and simple human reasoning. They began to combine their advanced technology with human practicality, and the results were remarkable. Kale found joy in teaching. He created simple diagrams, floating tutorials, and step-by-step instructions for alien engineers. He showed them that failure was not defeat, but a step toward a solution. Illyria watched, amazed at how effortlessly he inspired trust and creativity in beings so different from himself. One evening, after a long day of restoring a communications hub, Kale and Illyria floated above a glowing city. Lights twinkled like stars beneath them, ships moved in coordinated patterns, and signals flashed across the network. The Empire was no longer fractured, it was alive. You have done more than I imagined, Illyria said softly, her glow bathing Kale in warmth. My people will never forget you. I will never forget you. Humanity, you are extraordinary. Kale looked out at the city, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. He had been a simple salvager drifting alone through debris fields. Now he had restored a civilization, guided a queen, and reminded an entire species that hope, ingenuity, and courage were more powerful than any weapon. Illyria reached out, a gesture both human and alien. Kale, the galaxy has seen what humans can achieve. Your spirit, your mind, it is a gift, and it will guide us for generations to come. Kale smiled, feeling something he had never felt before, belonging. The stars were no longer cold, empty voids. They were full of potential, full of life, and full of opportunity. Humanity, small and fragile, could make a difference, and he had proven it. The rogue sparrow drifted on, carrying a human and a queen across the endless cosmos. They had restored hope, rebuilt networks, and inspired civilizations. Kale, the Salvager, had become more than he had ever imagined. He had become a symbol of human ingenuity, compassion, and courage. And as the stars stretched endlessly around them, Kale understood something profound. Even in the vast emptiness of space, a single human, determined and clever, could light the way for countless others. The journey was far from over, but the future had never looked brighter. For the first time in his life, Kale felt that humans, though ordinary in many ways, could achieve the extraordinary. And with Illyria by his side, guiding her people and learning from him, he knew that together they could reshape the galaxy in ways no one had dared to imagine. The stars beckoned, full of mystery and promise. And Kale, the simple salvager who had once drifted alone among the forgotten wrecks of the outer rim, was ready to answer. Kale stared out into the vastness of space, the countless stars reflecting in the ship's glass. Since meeting Illyria, he had never imagined his life could stretch so far beyond the lonely drift of a salvager's days. Every signal they restored, every colony they guided, made him realize that the galaxy was alive in ways he had only glimpsed before. And yet, with each victory, Kale felt a quiet tension building. They had rebuilt communications, inspired hope, and begun the reconstruction of the Zythurian Empire. But there were still vast regions untouched, places where the Queen's people remained isolated, afraid, or unaware of the return of their leader. Illyria sat beside him, her presence calm yet radiant. Kale, she said softly, the work we have done has brought hope, but there are still those who have never seen it. Even now, thousands of my people do not know I live. Some do not know that they are not alone. Kale nodded, hands resting on the ship's controls. Then we keep going, we find them, we show them what we've done. She smiled faintly, the glow around her eyes warming the cabin. I trust you to lead this effort. You have a way humans inspire others without commanding. They listen to you because they feel trust, not fear. That is rare. Kale looked down at his hands, calloused and marked from years of salvaging. "I don't feel like I'm doing anything special," he admitted. "I'm just figuring things out as I go." "You are extraordinary," Illyria said simply. "Your mind, your courage, your patience, it is the spark that my people need." Their next destination was one of the most isolated regions in the Zythurian Empire. Planets here had been cut off for centuries, drifting in silence with failing infrastructure and abandoned archives. Kale's sensors picked up minimal signals, just enough to locate potential colonies. The first world they approached was a frozen sphere, its surface covered in crystalline ice that reflected distant starlight like scattered diamonds. Landing carefully, Kale and Illyria stepped out onto the surface. The wind howled faintly, not like any wind on Earth, but a rushing movement of cold particles through the atmosphere. Illyria's glow dimmed slightly, her form shimmering as she adjusted to the unfamiliar environment. "It has been decades since anyone visited this world," she said. "My people here, they may not welcome outsiders." Kale adjusted his pack, gripping his tools. "Then we show them why they should welcome us, one step at a time, no pressure." They approached the colony slowly, Illyria projecting calm energy while Kale carried the tools and devices needed to restore basic functions. The buildings, once intricate and elegant, were now brittle and cracked. The power grids were inactive, communication towers dormant. Kale knelt beside a primary control console, examining the circuits. "I can make this work again," he said quietly, "but it will take patience." Hours passed as Kale rewired, repaired, and improvised. Illyria stood by, observing him with careful attention, occasionally guiding his work where alien systems diverged from human logic. The first spark of life came as a faint hum from the power grid. Lights flickered across the colony, awakening dormant systems. Illyria projected her voice to the inhabitants, soft yet commanding, introducing herself and assuring them of safety. The first few citizens emerged hesitantly, eyes wide at the sight of Illyria and Kale. Some recoiled from her glowing form, unfamiliar and awe-inspiring. Kale stepped forward, hands raised in a universal gesture of calm. "We're here to help," he said plainly. "You've been alone for a long time. We want to make sure you're safe and can reconnect with the rest of your people." Slowly, the inhabitants came closer. They observed Kale working, watched him adjust the systems, and noted his patience, precision, and focus. Without realizing it, they began to mirror his calm, trusting manner. It was human ingenuity in action, simple yet profoundly effective. Within hours, basic communication lines were restored, and the first hesitant messages were sent to nearby colonies. Illyria's people on other planets received the signal with astonishment and hope. Kale stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "That's one world," he said with a quiet grin. "One step closer." Illyria's glow brightened with warmth. "And it is because of you, Kale, they trust you. They see that humans act not out of power, but out of care." The next planet was more challenging. It had been abandoned after a technological catastrophe centuries ago, leaving a sprawling city frozen in time. Kale and Illyria approached cautiously, scanning for hazards. Kale's mind worked quickly, analyzing patterns of energy flow, anticipating structural weaknesses, and devising solutions with the few tools at his disposal. Illyria marveled at his adaptability. Where Zythurians relied on established protocols, Kale improvised with a creativity that was distinctly human. He repaired broken energy conduits, rerouted power to communication nodes, and restored partial systems to the city. Slowly, lights flickered to life, floating transport units hummed softly, and archives began to open. Illyria projected her voice across the city, welcoming the citizens, guiding them in simple terms toward cooperation and rebuilding. Kale observed quietly as the citizens began to move, rediscovering skills they had long forgotten. They watched him work, learning to combine human simplicity with Zythurian complexity. For the first time in centuries, they felt capable and empowered, and Kale realized that this teaching, guiding, restoring was the true power humans brought to the universe. Days turned into weeks. Kale and Illyria visited planet after planet, each with its own challenges and opportunities. Some colonies were wary, but Kale's presence inspired trust. He showed them that progress could be achieved without force, that patience and observation often solved problems that seemed insurmountable. Illyria's glow reflected the pride and admiration she felt, not just for Kale, but for the human spirit he embodied. One evening, as they rested aboard the Rogue Sparrow, Cale gazed out at a field of newly restored colonies. "We're making a difference," he said softly. "I never thought humans could have such an impact." Illyria smiled, her eyes glowing softly. "You have taught me humans can achieve extraordinary things with courage, creativity, and care. Not by force, not by dominance, but by heart and mind. That is a lesson my people will carry for generations." The following weeks brought their greatest challenge yet. A massive communication network, spanning dozens of planets, had failed long ago, leaving countless Zythurians unaware of each other. Rebuilding it required precision, coordination, and cooperation across vast distances. Cale approached the task methodically. He divided the network into manageable sections, repaired critical nodes first, and devised a simple yet effective method for linking them together. Illyria watched him work, projecting confidence and calm to the scattered colonies. Cale's instructions were clear, practical, and human. He encouraged colonies to adapt, to improvise when systems failed, and to rely on logic and observation rather than fear. Slowly, the network came alive, one node at a time. Signals pulsed across the galaxy, connecting Zythurians who had been isolated for centuries. The first responses were cautious, almost disbelieving. Then, as messages flowed, hope spread. Colonies began sending resources, offering assistance, and sharing knowledge. The Empire was no longer fractured, it was awakening. Illyria's eyes glowed brighter than ever, reflecting the collective joy and gratitude of her people. Cale felt a quiet satisfaction, but also humility. He had never imagined that a simple salvager could achieve so much. And yet, as he looked at Illyria, at the people reconnecting across the galaxy, he understood the truth. Human ingenuity, persistence, and compassion were forces more powerful than technology or fear. The work continued. Cale trained Zythurian engineers in human problem-solving techniques, teaching them to observe, adapt, and innovate. Illyria projected her authority with renewed confidence, now guiding her people in partnership with the human who had saved her. Together, they restored lost colonies, repaired ancient archives, and inspired hope across the stars. One quiet evening, as the Rogue Sparrow drifted above a luminous city on a newly restored planet, Illyria turned to Cale. "Cale, the galaxy has witnessed something remarkable. Your presence has shown that humanity can lead, inspire, and restore. My people will remember this always." Cale smiled, looking at the vibrant city below. "I didn't do it alone. You led them too. I just helped." "You did more than help," Illyria said softly. "You brought hope, creativity, and courage. You reminded my people that even the smallest can achieve the greatest. That is the human gift." Cale felt something he had never felt before, belonging. The stars were no longer distant, cold points of light. They were alive, full of potential, and brimming with life. Humanity, imperfect and ordinary in many ways, could achieve the extraordinary, and he had proven it. As they prepared to leave, Cale glanced at Illyria. "So, what's next?" Illyria smiled, her glow steady and radiant. "The galaxy is vast. There are still regions to restore, people to guide, and hope to spread. But now, we know we can do it together. Humans and Zythurians, side by side, shaping the future." Cale gripped the controls of the Rogue Sparrow, a quiet determination in his heart. For the first time, he felt that the possibilities were endless. Humanity could achieve what no one had imagined, and he, a simple salvager, had become the spark of that change. The stars beckoned, full of promise, mystery, and opportunity. And Cale, the human who had once drifted alone, now guided a queen, inspired a civilization, and proved that even the smallest, simplest life could make the greatest difference. The journey would continue, but for the first time, Cale looked forward to the future not with fear, but with hope, courage, and the quiet joy of knowing that humans, through ingenuity, compassion, and heart, could shape the universe in ways no one had ever dreamed. The galaxy was alive, and humanity had found its place among the stars.